Hey guys, welcome back to Morning Devos. It was great to hear from Craig yesterday and how powerful worship can be and the influence that it can have, and how it can just humble us, and how we need to be humbled in front of our God, because really it's just about Him. It's not about us and what we can do. And today I want to take us to the New Testament. And we're going to be, if you've got your Bibles, turn with us to Mark chapter 14, and I'm going to be looking at from verse 3 and looking at this passage where Jesus gets his feet anointed in perfume, and we read this passage is in Matthew, Mark, alludes to it in Luke and in John, and we know from John that this is Mary, Lazarus' sister, and I'll just read it. Verse 3: And while he was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he was reclining at the table, a woman came with an alabaster flask of an ointment of pure nard, very costly, and she broke the flask and poured it over his head. There were some who said to themselves indignantly, "Why was the ointment wasted like that? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, but you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Now there's a few things that we need to pick up from this. Firstly, that how creative can worship be? Who would think to come in with a jar of perfume and just pour it all over Jesus? It was a prophetic act as well. It showed a sign of Jesus' burial that was about to happen in the future, as it says in the passage. It was a costly act. This is where we need to look next. Worship costs. It cost her a lot of money. That perfume was expensive. She probably would have never been able to afford anything like that ever again. It was a selfless act. She could have used that money. It was a act where she was getting scorned left, right and centre by the disciples because of how she was worshipping, which is where we looked at the context from the beginning of the skepticism, how we worship. But ultimately it's an act of passion, and it's something that we can learn from as Christians. It's not about necessarily the moves we make or the posture that we have, but do we have passion in our hearts to worship, and can we be creative with that? So I ask you a question: how can you be creatively passionate in your worship this week?